My dog Mabel, well, she's crazy. Now, I use the term impulsive. She's anxious and she just can't settle down, at least most of the time. You know how when you listen to music, it usually puts you in this kind of mood. There's this music when you're really excited, basically your party music. There's dinner music. Now you get where I'm going. Now, what if there was music for your dog to help them relax? Well, in today's episode, Lisa Spector, she joins me. She's a Juilliard trained classical pianist. She's the founder of Canine Classical, but almost as important, she's a devoted dog lover. Now, Lisa's traveled all over the world as a concert pianist, but many times she brings her dogs along. And sometimes when she's practicing and performing, she's found out that her dogs were really relaxing. They were basically just chilling out. So she decided to dive deeper into it and figure out what was going on with her dogs. And it's just one of those things, obviously, that all of us dog lovers do. And guess what? She found just the right notes. Since then, she's been creating music to relieve pet anxiety for about 20 years. She's been on almost every show you can imagine, from CBS to NPR. Her soothing music now plays in over 1,500 animal shelters. And get this one, she's the only classical pianist to reach the top 20 Billboard for classical music. And that's right, you can probably guess it, for pet music. But that's just the tip of her musical scale. Lisa's just released her new album, Chopin for Canines, and I'll bet you, pretty sure, this one's going to reach the top 22. Now, one last thing. Lisa and I have a very special treat for you today. It's a surprise, but here's a hint. Now, I may be always off key, but Lisa hits the notes perfectly, and while listening to this episode, your pets may just want to take a nap if they are listening along with you.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange, losses and games, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Markakyle.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the For Real podcast. Today, I have a special one. I have a canine musical specialist. Her name is Lisa Spector. Lisa, welcome to the show, and I can't wait because I got a gazillion questions for you.
Hi, Mark. I look forward to speaking. Thank you.
Well, this is going to be a fun one for me. One is I know you have had a podcast, so it's going to make it easier for me in some ways, and probably harder because you're going to be a lot smarter. So it'll be fun. But anyways, I wanted to start with you, and I want to get back. I want to start early on because obviously you're a musician. I want to start how you, if it's a family thing. So this kind of take me through, your younger years too, and then we'll get to what we're going to talk about today.
Well, I grew up on the piano bench, I always say. I started playing when I was 7 and took it very seriously from the first note. My mother was my first teacher and got me professional training early on because she recognized my talent. And all I wanted to do was grow up and go to Juilliard and then become a concert pianist. And got just had wonderful performing opportunities and won lots of competitions when I was younger and did get accepted to Juilliard, graduated from Juilliard, having absolutely no idea that my Juilliard degree was going to go to the dogs at that point. So,
that's a good segue.
So in fact, I really wasn't even that much of a dog person back then. But sometimes the best things in life happen by seemingly accident at the time, and then you look back and think, oh, that was just divine intervention. And my kind of ramble into the world of creating music for dogs happened that way. So I was off performing and concertizing and touring for international competitions and concerts. And then I landed on a beautiful small coastal town south of San Francisco, and I opened a music school. So maybe 7 or so years into my music school, by then I was a huge dog lover. And I had been doing volunteer work at shelters, and I had started volunteering for the Guide Dogs for the Blind, which I know you're very familiar with from your recent interview.
On the show.
Yeah, so I became a puppy raiser because I lost my golden retriever, Byron, and I just thought, Well, I'd been to several graduations at Guide Dogs for the Blind, and I just knew I someday want to do it. And I thought, well, I'm not ready to commit for a lifetime dog again, so I'll just do this for a while, not knowing that you get that puppy and you bring that puppy home within an hour, you're in love. So
I
right.
know. We talked about it on that episode. When being a pup raiser, I don't have that skill because once I had one for that period of time, that dog's not leaving my house. I'm sorry.
Well, when you get to what makes you do it is because generally the puppy raisers do it over and over and over again, and that's how they handle it. They drop their, then 16-month-old puppy off for training. They pick up the new puppy that same day because they can't stand it because it's so hard. But you do get to see the benefit of it.
Sure.
But anyhow, so I'm new at this. I have a 4-month-old rambunctious yellow lab named Sanchez, and I owned a music school. And so I wanted to learn how, and he was the mascot. He came to school with me. He went everywhere with me. He was my guide dog puppy. So I wanted to learn how to get my 4-year-old kids in a group class to focus, to calm down. They came in, running and screaming, wanting to play, and I wanted to teach them music. So I started studying what prescription of music, and specifically what prescription of classical music worked to calm children and to get them to focus, and found the right prescription of music, and it worked for these kids. Within 30 seconds, they went from running in and screaming. They don't even realize the music's on, but they're just calm and focused. However, I look over at my 4-month-old rambunctious puppy, and every single time I play this music, he was out. And I thought, this is great. It's working for the kids, but I think I'm onto something with the dogs. And so I wanted to investigate. So I reached out to a sound researcher and we connected with a veterinary neurologist, Dr. Susan Wagner, who later ran a couple-year research study to find out. Number one phase was if certain prescription of classical music that worked with children in neurodevelopment centers, that was music I was playing at the time, if that worked to calm dogs in the shelter environment.
What year was this?
This was so long ago, over 20 years ago. It was 2003, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. It was 22 years ago. I don't know where the years went, but that's when it started by accident. And then Susan Wagner ran a second research study in the home environment where people were more familiar with the exact anxiety issues that the dogs had, and all age ranges of dogs. And the results were so profound that we thought people are going to think we're lying, because classical music, compared to the reason we only compared it to other classical music at that stage was because an earlier research study in 2001 had been done by an Irish behaviorist, Deborah Wells.
Right. I read about her.
Yeah, so she was kind of the first to do this, and she tested a variety of music. I think it was heavy metal, jazz, TV, control group with no sound, and classical, and found that classical music was calming for dogs in the shelter environment. That didn't surprise me at all. I'd been playing classical my whole life. I'd had dogs my whole life, and dogs always gravitated towards the piano when I was playing. However, classical music is an enormously broad term for music that's written over 400 to 600 years, depending on who you ask. And it could be for solo instrument like piano, and it could be for solo high frequency instrument like violin or flute. We'll talk about that in a moment. Or it could be for a huge 100-piece orchestra, and dogs are going to respond differently. So we chose in that phase of my career, when I was just getting started, we chose chamber music with a small group, a trio of instrumentalists with piano at a certain tempo versus solo piano at a different tempo. And the music that had been slowed down and simplified and was lower was really the one that was the star of getting dogs to calm and relieve their anxiety issues. And that was the start of my first company, Through a Dog's Ear. It landed us on the CBS Early Show with absolutely an amazing response. And that got started with a book and one CD way back. That launch was in 2008.
What's funny is if it 2008 it was so big, I think dogs and pets now are even bigger, way bigger than they were back then. So it'd be interesting if you run a show now and the response you have, I think it would be even bigger.
Absolutely, and the thing is, back then, first of all, the music wasn't streaming, music wasn't even downloads didn't even exist. This was CDs. We'd gone from cassette tapes to CDs.
Oh, yeah.
So, we had to ship them, we had a fulfillment house, so it was very different. So, there was a delayed time when before people they heard about it and then they received it in the mail, so that took some time. And then also, there's been so much research then of how our human rela and that's what we'll talk about later here, but how our human relationship has developed with dogs.
Right.
There's so much part of our everyday life in ways that they weren't back then. And back then, I mentioned Deborah Wells, she was the first research study, but she wasn't the last. Since then, there's been at least a dozen to 20 more research studies, and my current music is more adaptable to the there have been some changes, so it's more adaptable to the more current research studies.
Well, I know NIH has done some too. I want to bring something up that's relative but not relative. I watched this documentary yesterday. It's not on the theaters yet. It's called Folk Tales, and I was and what it made me remember. I told you I go down all these different holes.
Right.
I wanted to watch this documentary. It's about these schools in Norway. They're called folk high schools. So when you get done with school, you go to this school, and it's kind of like a transition school for you to go out into the real world, like either go on to university or work and become an adult. This was a story of this school where these kids went, and they were kind of like a little bit of the misfits. But the school, you go there and you learn how to survive in the Arctic, but more importantly, they have sled dogs there, and you learn how to use sled dogs. And what it does with these kids, the relationship between the dogs and the kids is really what kind of gives these kids a whole different look at the real world. It was really, really a great movie.
I'm gonna check that out, it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's not out yet. I have access to some movies sometimes that come out early. It's coming out, I think, the 25th, but it's called Folk Tales. And I'd recommend, by the way, for everybody that's listening, they're all animal people. You guys will all get this that's listening to, but just make that. Here I go. But my point is that, yeah, the relationship between humans and animals is so different than what we even realize.
And I feel like we're just at the brink. We're just starting this. We're just starting to understand how profound our relationship is.
Yeah. So let's keep going on what you're doing. So one of the things I read, and you've alluded to it, and I wanted to just kind of, I've got notes because I will never remember any of this stuff. But what they were talking about in music, and the reason why classical, I'm glad you said that because one of my questions was, well, define what classical is because it is a bit broad range. But they said that it's slow. It's the slower tempos, lower pitches, and fewer dynamic changes are the ones that tend to work better for the dogs with anxiety and that. Is that what you're finding with your new stuff too?
Absolutely. So if you are let's say you're in the car and you're having a conversation with your passenger, you're driving, you're having a conversation, and you put on a Beethoven symphony. In order to have that conversation, you have to adjust the volume so many times because that's how Beethoven wrote it. That was what made Beethoven. The sudden surprises, the sudden sforzatos, the sudden even soft sounds,
Yeah,
the silences, all that. All of that could be very jolting and to a dog and actually charge their nervous system. If you think about classical, so because people often say this my involvement of this went so far back that there were no apps playing classical music. It was radio stations. So what everyone heard at 3 o'clock in California, everyone around the world heard at the same time, right? So it wasn't like now where you just turn on, it starts where you are.
right.
So I can guarantee you, because I studied this, classical music stations were smart. At 3 in the afternoon, they put on classical music to charge the human nervous system, to wake you up when you get tired at work. And that is not the music that is conducive to calming dogs.
Yeah, obviously.
Right. So what I do, the music I create, first of all, I say that it's for both ends of the leash because number one, if you're just working, I don't say just lightly because it's a big term when I say just anxiety issues, but it's just because I'm also focusing on the human animal connection, heart connection. But if you are working with, let's say, an anxiety issue, and let's say it's separation anxiety, and you put on classical music, even if it's like classical music on your TV and it's streaming, Well, you have no control. Your dog might be listening to the 1812 overture with cannons coming out of the stereo.
Right.
Your dog might be listening to this Beethoven, Ninth Symphony that has a choral, and it might be really jolted and charge their nervous system. So what I do is I record classical music. I do the work for you. So in other words, I take out the forte, the loud parts. I take out the surprises. I take out the unpredictable patterns. Dogs love patterns. They love consistency. Not quite as much as cats, but almost. So I create that consistency with the rhythm, with the tempo, and with lower frequencies. So when I left through a dog's ear, I had just had a very severe right hand injury.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
I want to talk about your hand injury, and I want to keep on our same pace, but I want to talk about your hand injury because you had to teach yourself how to do music with one hand for a while. Do you mind if we jump in there, or do you want to save that for later?
No, this is a perfect time because it relates to why this led to more dog music, because when I only had use of my left hand, left hand plays the bass on the piano.
By the way, I'm left-handed.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So left hand plays the lower frequencies. So I knew from my research studies that the lower frequencies calm the canine nervous system. So I started my then new album was Dog Gone Calm, and it starts with 3 or 4 selections for left hand only for that exact reason. And not only that, but I was starting to do concerts again with my left hand only. It was such a severe injury that a medical professional told me I would never use my right hand again at the piano.
What was the accident?
I fell. I was carrying a water bottle through the loop, and it was on my ring finger, my right hand, and the water bottle did not release when I tripped over a curb. So it was like I thought my finger had fallen off my hand. Luckily, it didn't, and I had an absolutely fabulous surgeon that carried me through 4 hand surgeries and a fabulous second hand therapist that took me through 186 hand therapy sessions over 3 or 4 years.
Who's counting?
But who's counting? I know. I only counted on my medical record. And she taught me something so important that not only transferred into my musical career, but also transferred into my dog career and just relationship with dogs. Her number one message every time I saw her was little by little, just reward
One step at a time.
the progress little by little. So you think
Wow.
about dogs. Let's take a dog with severe sound phobias, and let's say it's, we're still in thunderstorm season and they react to that and people put the music on. Well, that didn't work. She's not sleeping yet. Well, that's way too much to ask of your dog right away. You have to condition a response. So
Right.
the whole idea with this music, that why it works for canine anxiety issues, is because you're actually building an conditioned emotional response.
You're training them, so it's kind of like when you give them a treat or something too.
Exactly. Like my dogs that I've had, this started with Sanchez, who then got career change. So he became my first career change dog. Then I had Gina, who was a career change from guide dogs, who lived to 15 and a half until last year. And then now I have a young pup, my Sundance is 2. And all of them have been conditioned that I start playing the piano. That means you go to your dog bed and you chill.
Oh,
I don't ever have to say, go to your dog bed now, I'm at the piano. Like they just associate that. And that's what the music does, and that's why I'm starting to lean more into the heart connection through music that we have with our dogs, because I have seen firsthand how profound it is.
Yeah, and let's dig into the heart thing because there's a lot of science behind that, and this is beforehand too, about what the theory is why the music calms them down. Can you talk a little bit about that? I read some stuff, and I'm curious if that's what you see too.
So in terms of the calming aspect or the heart connection?
Well, the heart connection and the calming connection. At least that's let me just say what I read, and then you tell me I'm wrong, and and tell me what's right. So what I read is that one of the reasons it does is it the music plays to the dog's heart, and there's some theory out there that it also by doing that, the heartbeat also releases dopamine.
Yeah, there's more studies in this that I'm even familiar with, but none of that surprises me because if you think about it, if you're let's say you have a dog with extreme anxiety issue and music can be such a simple and free solution too.
Right,
It's, and I'm not saying, you know, I am all for good veterinary help, and in some cases dogs do need extra support through their veterinarians. So I'm not saying don't do that, but if you combine that with the music and it not only builds that calming canine response and slows down their heart rate and stops them from panting and stops them from pacing and, could be barking, whatever the issue is. But here's the thing. If you, which is really easy to do, if you, as the dog lover in the family, just get anxious and your heart rate starts to increase because there's a thunderstorm coming, you have to leave the house, you gotta get to work,
right,
and so you have anxiety, your dog is gonna feel that anxiety. So the reason I say over and over that the music I create and record for dogs is not only for dogs, it's for both ends of the leash. Because if you're not calm, which is, I know, not an easy feat, but if you're not calm, your dog's gonna pick up on your stress. If you're stressed just leaving the house because your dog has experienced separation anxiety, your dog is going to feel that. So the more you can condition the dog to associate the music to mean all is good with the world, because what you wanna do is you wanna play my music at first, not during the thunderstorm, not during the fireworks, not when you're absent. You wanna build an emotional response, so listen to the music together with your dog. Like, there's nothing wrong with you taking a 20-minute break. That's how veterinarians prescribe it. Take a 20-minute break, listen together, and then the dog builds an emotional response of, all is good with the world. My person is with me. You're not playing it during fireworks or thunderstorms or loud construction noise. So you're playing it purposely at a calm time, towards bedtime is a good way to settle into your bedtime routine. And so you're building that emotional response. And that also is what builds the heart connection between you two, because there is nothing like that feeling of you have an dog with anxiety and you see them chill. It just warms your heart and your dog finally relaxes.
and I love the way you slow down when you say that too, by the way. But the other thing is and, we talked about David T, but one of the things that really rings true to me is music. We all have an emotional attachment to different songs for different reasons. Something happened in our life, certain time, we're going on our very first concert or we're going out to do something and we're all playing this music. There's one friend of yours that you always played that music together. And I would assume that a dog, and this is probably me thinking bigger, but a dog, if we're playing that and they're having that relationship with their human and they're having a good time saying, wow, this is really cool. When you play it again, they start associating all those good things with it.
Exactly. Yeah, dogs are smart. Yeah, and that's exactly right. Well said.
Well, I'm learning from you. So let's keep going. I find all this stuff really, really fascinating. So let's go through your history. So you back then, so 2002 or three, whatever it was, you were still. And by the way, I love the word concertizing. I never heard that before. I love that word. Uh, you were still doing that along with your school too, and you were doing all this stuff with guide dogs with the blind. I think you also do some good dog training too, don't you?
I do well, I'm an agility handler. So my last dog, Gina, was a two-time agility and champion, which is dog training. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
really, 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 really fun, addictive dog training.
right.
So I was very dedicated to the sport. We went to nationals 3 or 4 times. We competed a lot, and she was just a blast, which is pretty unusual for a guide dog because, they're bred to be calm
Right,
and for agility, you need a focused dog, but you need a high drive dog to be successful.
right. But they're smart dogs too, that's the
They're very smart, and she was adopted to me because basically they said, she needs to go to sports home, she needs to be working. She's very active. She was very petite for a lab. She was only 45 pounds
wow.
in a black lab, and just, her whole life people said, "Is she a puppy?" So, because she was always small.
Yeah, wow.
And, just super fu all she wanted to do was work, and that's what they're bred to do. It's just a different line of work.
So, but let's go back though. So in 2003, you've got your music school. Were still doing concerts at that time or concertizing?
I settled down a little bit because I had my music school, but, performing in my area more instead of traveling internationally at that point.
Right.
And then we launched through Doug Zier on the CBS Early Show in 2008, and, probably about 5 years into that, it just got to be too much to manage both businesses, so I sold my music school, and then I did the Through Doug's Ear full time I was in that with that company for 10 years, so till 2018.
Yeah. So, and at that point is when you're really recognizing I've got something here that's really good for animals and for pet owners as well. Right.
Exactly, and at that point, it was a little less obvious to me, though, how good it was for people as well. I've learned a lot since leaving that company.
Well, I want to get to that. So we're at 2018. You're now getting ready to do your own stuff on your own, I guess, at that point. Is that what you're?
Not exactly. It took me a few years. So I had 4 surgeries for my hand over 3 years. So it took me a few years to kind of get my feet on the ground and focus on anything other than my hand healing. It was pretty major, thing. So and when I did start performing, I started performing not only, it came to me to play music for left hand for the dogs, but also I started learning major, major repertoire, concert repertoire for left hand for performance. So I started performing left hand only maybe a couple of years of that before now all of my concerts are for one and two hands. So just so your listeners know, I perform in addition to recording music for dogs. Perform full out, flashy, showy Rachmaninoff list Chopin for two hands as well. So I did defy all odds, and I did recover from that hand injury.
So talk to me about what in history were there many people in the history of music where there were just one-handed pianists?
Not a ton, but certainly a good 1 or 2 handfuls. So one of the things that got me through
One handful.
Yeah, so one of the things that got me through that period is I was reading a book by Leon Fleischer. Leon Fleischer, who passed away during the pandemic, was just legendary musician, teacher, very well known in the music circuit, and I had taken lessons from him, but I was young and I did not appreciate he was a left-handed he went through 50 years of not being able to use his right hand until he could. It was unknown at the time. It took years, decades for them to diagnose focal dystonia, which is getting to be more of a common problem with musicians, particularly pianists, oftentimes from overuse. And but I was in my 20s and I did not appreciate the physical challenges that he had gone through, but he did write this fabulous book called My 9 Lives, and I swear that book I went to bed with it every night when my hand was in the cast and the whole thing, and it helped me so much because of the final outcome that he was playing with 2 hands, and I actually went to his 90th birthday concert with him playing with 1 and 2 hands, and I remember an interview he had with the New York Times, and they asked him, they said, "Leon, you have been told over and over again," like he had a comeback where he played for 2 ends and then he lost use of his right hand again, and like over and over it happened. And they said, "But now you're playing with 2 hands. Why is it that you made it? Why is it you're doing this?" He said, "Because I always believed I would."
Oh, I love that.
And that opened my eyes, like, okay, I don't have to listen to the medical professional that told me I would never play again.
Right.
And I just worked so hard I am going to believe this no matter what. And it happens. And I will tell you, I'm not 100, people say, "Are you 100% recovered?" And I say, "No, I actually don't want to be 100% recovered because there were so many gifts I got from this experience. I could go on for days with them. But one of them is something that because my right hand is not I'm not in pain, I'm not limited, and my strength is really good. I just have limited reach in certain chords I could reach when I was 11 years old that I can't reach anymore. So I leave out notes. Sometimes I play a wrong note. I leave out sections. And my motto in the piano world has become, I even have a notebook in front of me with my printing on this, which is screw perfect, just make music. I did not learn that at Juilliard. And the reason that's relevant to dog music is because when I started recording music for dogs, I wanted to hide it from Juilliard. I thought they are going to hate this. They're going to take away my diploma. I'm changing classical music. I'm taking out sections. This is not what I learned in school. And in the middle of that fear of they were gonna come take away my diploma, and I'm only kind of half joking, I really kind
No,
of
no,
thought they
it's Juilliard. I get it.
might. They called me and said, "Hey, I heard what you're doing with your music for dogs. Can you come to New York? We'd like to interview you." So in the middle of all that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I bet you almost appreciate your playing more now than you did before because you were probably such a perfectionist. Now you can just enjoy it more.
That is so well said. And a dear friend, Sue Hammond, who's a fabulous pianist, and when this was going on, I was at her house every month playing some new left hand music for her. And, even when I was just playing my left hand, she said, "I hope you don't mind me saying this. I don't want it to be an insult, but do you know that you've become a much better musician by playing with your left hand only?" And I said, "Sue," and she said, maybe it's because you have to listen differently and the voices are different." I said, "Sue, that's part of it." I said, "But the bigger part is I almost lost what I had forgotten that I love most in life, which is playing piano, because at that time, I was at the computer so much that when I running this business, the Through a Dog's Ear business, that when I got to the piano, it was, like, late at night, and I felt like if I played the piano in the middle of a workday, I felt like I was having an affair.
Oh, I get it. Oh, yeah.
And so I'd gotten so far away from piano because I had done these recordings so early on, and we came out with 16 albums from them that I didn't have to re-record. And I got so far away from playing piano that I didn't realize how important it was to me. And I'd say all of the time since then, and I've really grown this career of my piano world in a different way than I ever could have dreamed of too. And in addition to the business of music for dogs, that I'm so grateful that that day of June 27th, 2017, when I fell, was simultaneously the worst and best day of my life at the same time.
Well, you didn't know it was the best day of your life then. You do now.
I absolutely did not. As I was being taken away in the ambulance from so much pain.
Well, you had a plan from the time you're probably 7 or 8 years old, and your mom probably was your mom was a pianist too as well, right then?
My mom was a wonderfully talented amateur pianist. She never had training, but she had a good ear, so she knew enough to start me on piano, and she
Right.
I was fortunate that she knew to recognize my talent at a young age to get me professional training.
So I'm gonna tell you something. The worst thing about podcasts, it goes out to the world, everybody knows this stuff now. So, anyways, when I went to college, I taught myself, in the place I was living, there was a piano, so I taught myself to play the piano. But you would cringe just seeing my hands on the thing, but I could play music, and it was just music that I knew, and I could hear it, and, I learned how to do chords basically the same, similar to by reading the guitar chords on the top, right? That's how I kinda learned how to do it. But when I did it, I got to the point where you would know what song I was playing and all that kind of stuff, but I would just go away. It was almost meditative for me.
Music is very meditative for me. So my warm up in the morning at the piano is I don't start with scales. I don't start with hand. I don't start with etudes. I start with music that opens my heart, because my goal for sitting at the piano is to listen and always opening my heart, whether it's for people or for dogs. Doesn't matter.
Well, I think it goes back to what we said earlier about association. All that stuff has some association to you probably when you're younger, older, whatever. But if I hear a song that plays on the radio, and if it's one I happen to like, there's a memory that's attached to that.
Exactly. Well, this is a different topic, but maybe 10 years ago or so, there was a wonderful documentary. I wish I remember the name, but you probably saw it, with taking music into senior centers and even facilities, cognitive areas with
Sure.
seniors suffering from dementia and certain music, and it was different for everyone. So it was a whole study of a man who wanted to, in those days, get iPods were popular. So iPods into the hands of these seniors to help them. Like one man had very limited mobility and actually had more mobility just by listening to a song that he recognized from his childhood that he had a good emotional response to.
Oh, I 100 I haven't seen it. I wanna see it now, but that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's just you have to bring Kleenex to watch it.
Yeah, but it's a good Kleenex, that's the one thing.
Exactly.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by PrepVet, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at prepvet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
But I wanna talk about, one thing that I read on your website, and this is not relative to dogs, it's to humans, so you've got your ninja tricks of teaching people how to learn fast. Can you just touch on that and talk about one of the things you do so young kids can learn classical music faster? I think that's fascinating as well.
Well, since I sold a music school, I don't teach children anymore. I specialize in working with adults.
Okay,
So these are adults that are either, intermediate to advanced. So they're either relearners, like they're newly retired and they're coming back to piano, or they're past some, like David's a late learner, or they're people who, were good enough to major in music, but their parents said, well, you got to go make a living. So go to business school, something like that. So I just love working with them. And so the piano ninja tricks is all about helping them establish smart practice habits. And it was really came about partly after my hand injury. When I was told I would never play piano again, I realized that, well, she hasn't heard me play and she doesn't know what I've learned about practicing. So I've never had a hand injury from overuse, from tension, from, carpal tunnel or focal dystonia or anything like that. But I've had, or tendonitis, but, I had this major hand injury. So I could relate, number one, I could relate to the emotional pain of just physically not being able to play the music your heart is calling you to play because you don't have basically the practice habits
right.
and the practice training. So all the piano ninjas are really establishing new practice habits. And then I've started this global membership, the Piano Ninja Tricksters Club, where I help them, relearn how to practice so that they learn classical music of their dreams twice as much in half the time. And I just love it to the end of time. I just absolutely love it.
Well, I love shortcuts anyway, so that was perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wanna let's get back to dogs. I know you've rebranded yourself, so let's talk about what you're doing, how you're doing it. Let's talk about the hard thing. Let's really get into what you're doing now so everybody can, I know NPR called you at one point the pet calming maestro. I know you were on all these different shows and that, but let's talk about Lisa now and who you are and what you're doing and that stuff.
Sure. Well, it's exciting and it's brand new, just released on National Dog Day. Is so when I left through a dog's ear, that then when I was just in the final stages with that company, they became I Calm Pet. And then after my non-compete was over, I opened up My Zen Pet, thinking that someday I'd want to do music for cats and for horses and all that. And you know what? As I mature, I realize I'm not gonna do that. I speak dog. That is my language. I speak dog. So
Sure.
so I decided to rebrand into, and I don't do jazz, I don't do other music, so decided to rebrand into Canine Classical. And, just came out as a total new rebrand, and my new focus is creating composer-specific albums. The album that was just released is Chopin for dogs. So I'm known in my piano world as being a bit of a Chopin specialist. I've been to Poland. I visited Chopin's birth home. I visited his gravesite in France. And I have competed in the international Chopin competition. I've won national Chopin competitions. And I thought, well, why don't I apply this to dogs?
Absolutely.
So there'll probably be several volumes of Chopin for dogs, but I started with that, and that's newly out on streaming platforms. And next I'm going to be going to Beethoven, Schumann for dogs and so forth. But people ask all the time, do dogs prefer certain composers? And my answer is, number one, observe your dog. So for the enormous majority, like 99.9% of dogs do not prefer a certain composer. What they prefer is the certain prescription of classical music that I've described, of slow down, no surprises, softer dynamics, patterns. And so that's what I do with classical music. So I play Chopin, like I'll demonstrate with a nocturne that has a very virtuoso loud middle section. I'm going to take that out of the music for dogs. But do they prefer Chopin over Beethoven? You might have a dog that does. So I always ask people to observe your dog. Do they go towards the source of the sound? Do they go towards the speaker? Do they want to leave the room? And I will tell you, in all my life, I can't count how many dogs I've met, how many dog friends I've had, how much volunteer work I've done with dogs. And in only one case have I met a dog who prefers a certain composer and doesn't like certain composers. It was 25 years ago. So that dog is no longer alive. It was Dalmatian. And I was staying with the family as I was touring and playing the Grieg piano concerto. And the Grieg piano concerto starts with really high-pitched, high on the piano, really high chords. And that dog would start howling every time I started the Grieg, and she would leave the room when I played Bach or
That's
Mozart.
funny.
So that was the one dog I met who had a specific preference, and I don't even think she preferred the Grieg. It was just high pitched, and so I don't think it was so comfortable for her. But she did. They told me she's going to leave the room when you play Bach. I said no way, and sure enough, she did.
Do you find we talked about this when we talked whenever that was, but do you find in some certain breeds tend to forget who the composer was, but a different tempo or anything like that?
I have not found that either. I think that's a little bit of a myth,
Okay,
because I think the difference, though, it's a fine line, though, because the difference is there are certain breeds that are known to be more sound sensitive.
right.
Border collies are just known to be more sound sensitive. So someone might be playing classical music and have that observation that's not quite accurate, because it depends, again, what it's not the composer, it's the specific quality, what I call the prescription of classical music, that it is. But I've just found some breeds to be more sound sensitive. And here's the thing, that's the caveat that can be a little tricky, is that what I have found from personal experience is that the more sound sensitive, the more the person is aware how the music helps them. The more discrete sound sensitivity, and I'll describe the difference in a second. The more discrete sound sensitivity, the less the person in the family is likely to recognize. So I'll give you an example. So a sound phobic dog is obvious. They are going to shake during thunderstorms, the construction sound, fireworks. They're going to hide in the bathtub. They're going to go under the bed.
Right.
They're going to be it's very obvious. Most dogs that are sound sensitive, is not that obvious. It is noticing. You want to notice, do they perk their ears when the construction starts outside? Do they go in the other room? Do they, are they barking at everything that walks by? So a lot of sound sensitivity is not as obvious. And what I have found is that people who aren't as, it's a newer field. So people who aren't as educated in this field, who are wonderful pet parents, pet guardians, but aren't aware that their dogs have this sound sensitivity, they play the music and they say, well, that didn't work, because they're not noticing. The signs are more subtle. So it might be like, oh, they go and lay down. But if they didn't notice the sound sensitivity to begin with, they're not going to notice that. So I think that can lead to sometimes the myth of certain breeds are, are going to need different composers because it's so subtle, and it's a fine art of understanding your dog and their behavior and their body language around sound, assuming it's sound. It could be some people don't know when their dogs have separation anxiety, but put a camera on that dog when it's alone and they're going to know. So it could be, it could be excessive barking and they think, oh, isn't that cute? Every time someone walks by, they're barking. Well, that is stress. And the music addresses stress. The whole number one quality to it is addresses stress. It addresses the canine nervous system. So wherever the stress is coming from, if you can address that directly with something so simple like music, there's a million ways to get more familiar with how your dog is reacting to the music.
Well, what about this? If you find that there's a music that seems to settle them down or make them more calm, if you're not home, what about playing that music all day long? Is that not recommended, or is that would you just do it at certain times?
That's a really good question. It completely depends. So number one, I don't want to forget to say this. I'm going to add this now, and then I'm going to answer your question. If you're playing this when you are not home, make sure it is not too loud.
Right.
So the number one mistake, my music is playing my music I recorded with Through a Dog's Ear is playing in over 1,500 shelters because of a grant that I received from Bayer Animal Health. And I go into the shelters and I hear the music, and almost always it's too loud. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this would drive me crazy if I were listening to this all day long.
Yeah.
So how loud is too loud? Well, dogs' hearing is much more sensitive than ours. So you want to play it at a volume that if you were home all day and you were playing this, what level is comfortable, and then lower it a little bit, because it is not about
Very low in the background.
yeah, it's not about masking sounds. You're not going to mask thunderstorms or fireworks sounds or construction noise. It is about calming the canine nervous system. Now, in terms of how frequent should dogs listen to it, it all depends whether you should play it all day. So if you have an environment where changes are going to be coming into the environment, let's say you go to work and you know that at noon, the mail person opens up the box and your dogs bark. You know that at
Trucks driving by.
3:00 construction's going by, something like that. Then I would play it all day. Dogs tend to, if it's a controlled environment, which it depends on your living situation, so it's usually not. But if it's a controlled environment and your dog is not going to have anything new, then it's the first hours, first playing of the album is going to be most helpful to them. But if you know of anything, let's say it's a car ride. So you're playing for your dog in the car and everything's fine. And then you go through a toll booth. So I'm thinking old days where you used to have to stop in a toll booth and take out cash and pay someone, right? Right. So, but that's a change and they start barking. So that's the time to play the music 20 minutes before you get to the toll booth or whatever the situation
That
is.
was when it's 35 cents too.
Yeah, exactly. I know. So it's, same with so many things have changed. But so it depends on what changes are in the environment. So, but I do not actually recommend 24/7 because we all need auditory breaks. And I know for myself, I like to say the more mature I get, the more I work in silence. Like I used to have my classical playlist all day long and I still have it and I use it in the mornings and I use it in the afternoons, but by the evening, I just want silence. So depends on your situation, but even in shelters, I tell them like play it during the day when they're most excited and people are visiting. Definitely play it during meal times when there's over arousal. But it does if no one's coming into the shelter environment after midnight, have it shut off.
Well, first off, we didn't talk about this. Your music is now playing in over 1,500 shelters and rescues in that, right?
I don't know at this stage because I'm not with Her Dog's Ear anymore, but when I left the company, that was true. I personally, like when I say personally, I'm talking about way back in the day, 2008, when these were CDs that I personally put into envelopes, brought to the post office, and we had a free from my volunteer work in shelters. I knew how much it would help.
Right.
So it was worth it to me to go to the post office a couple times a week and deliver these shelter CDs. So that was way back when shelters had CDs, and then I went to downloads and then streaming. So, but when it was around 2012, I want to say, that I got a grant from Bayer Animal Health, and they delivered another 1,000 CDs. So when I left the company in 2018, it was playing in 1,500 shelters. I don't know if it still is, but every once in a while I walk into a shelter and I hear my music, and I'll have a conversation with, like it just happened. I am volunteering now at the SPCA Monterey Bay, and I go in and I hear my music and they'll say like, "Oh, we're playing Icon Pen." So, well, that's me. I'm at the piano. I'm the one that recorded that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And the one thing we didn't mention too, that it's on your website, but you talk about you're a top charted dog music person.
Yes, I made classical. I was the first music to record music for pets that made classical Billboard Top 20.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. That's really cool. So let's talk about one last thing, and I know we have a surprise for everybody, but you were talking what you're doing now about the heart. We really didn't get into that. Can you talk a little bit about that, what you're doing now?
Sure. So the most common thing in my dog world that people say to me by observation is, "I want the relationship with your dog that you have." And that started with Sanchez, then it went to Gina, and now I have Sundance, my young 2-year-old lab. And I just noticed that people are saying that over and over, and I thought, "Can I bottle it up? Like, what is it? How do I offer that to them?" And then I realized that, yes, I do science-based positive reinforcement training. I'm an agility handler. I'm doing dock diving now with Sundance and doing tricks with her, and all that's great. It's just fabulous. But I also have this ability to create heart connection through my piano playing. Now, I do it live. Like, I played the piano. I live with my dog, right? So I play the
No,
piano.
wait, wait, well, let's stop there for a second. You live with your dog and you live with your piano.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And those
exactly.
words are like, they go together, right?
I know.
Yeah, so and I have let me tell you, it's a large piano for a small room. So and then my right now, my yellow lab is right next to me, Sundance, and, she's a pretty high drive dog too, and she's, snoozing away. And so because she was hearing my music earlier, so I just thought about, okay, here is the thing that kinda separates me from everyone else, and also it's just unique, but everyone else could have it, which is building that heart connection through music. It is just something, it's so intangible, but it's something that I feel like when Gina was very young, she was about, I think she was 3, and she inhaled, so to speak, a very long, raw, like blade of grass that was so thick. And anyhow, it all went downhill, of course, on a weekend, really fast. And she ends up in ER. And we didn't know what it was. I just knew she was coughing up blood. And so they had to bring in a specialist to the scoping procedure to take it out. But they literally, she was 3. And they said, "You need to prepare yourself to say goodbye just in case she doesn't make it." Her heart was filling, and I was just like beside myself. So during that time, I had to prepare myself to say goodbye, which she lived till she was 15 and a half. So luckily it wasn't a goodbye. She was fine within a few days. But at the time I didn't know. So what did I do? I put on my music.
Oh, wow.
And so I wanted that like, I will never forget that heart connection that was built, like, just in case she didn't make it, then I would have that feeling, "Thank God it all worked out." But that piece that I it was me playing, but then became our heart connection piece for her life for 15 and a half years.
Right. You associate that back to the association thing. That's fine.
Exactly, exactly. So, I've only had Sundance for, like, 7 months, so I don't know what her piece is yet, but Sanchez had his own special piece, Gina had hers, and it'll take me a little more time with Sundance.
Well, it's funny because I have different friends if we're going out drinking or whatever we're doing. There's certain songs with certain people I'll play in the car every time we drive together because we have a memory together.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I want to get I so we had this surprise. We didn't talk about this before we start recording. Do you want to do the surprise at the end, or would you rather do it now and then we get into your website and the joke thing and all that? When do you want to do it?
Let's do it now.
Okay.
So my new album is Chopin for Dogs, and you'll see Sundance on the piano bench,
Cool.
next to me on the cover, and this is a Chopin nocturne. So nocturne means next nocturnal, nighttime music, but a lot of Chopin nocturnes, including this one, have a very virtuoso middle section. So
I'm so excited for you to do this, by the way.
good. So I'm gonna take out like in the recording, I'm taking out the virtuoso section, and I'm just gonna play the section that's more conducive to calming dogs, that has the ingredients we've talked about of slower tempo, steady tempo, no dynamic surprises, very consistent, and you'll hear a repeated note in the bass in the left hand because lower frequencies
Right.
calm the canine nervous system. So if you are listening and have your dog with you, this is a good time to cuddle up together.
I got a crazy dog. I'm telling you right now, this is gonna be played for my dog today.
Okay. What's your dog's name, Mark?
Her name's Mabel.
Mabel. So this is for Mabel and Sundance, and for whoever's listening, it's for your dog at home, and also for you because it's really for both ends of the leash.
Perfect. I like both ends of the leash. Now we're getting concertized.
How did Mabel do?
Mabel did great. I wanna clap. That was so awesome. This may be my favorite episode now.
Oh, that's so sweet. So speaking of clapping, when I do these concerts live for dogs, it's the one time in my concert career that I ask that there's no applause because the applause will stimulate and charge the canine nervous system. Look at them up barking, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so God, that was awesome. First of all, thank you so much for doing this. This is great. So I want everybody to figure out how to get a hold of you, how to find everything. You know, I'm assuming it's on Spotify and all that stuff. So give everybody whatever you can think of that people can find you. And by the way, everybody listening, it's in the description now, but you can find it there. But go ahead and bring it up for everybody that doesn't want to go back and find it.
Yeah, so it's on streaming and, Chopin for Dogs, and also my original album, Dog Gone Calm, is also on all streaming platforms. I think there's 1 or 2 maybe Chopin selections on that, and that's the one that starts with left hand only, but this is the first of the series of composer-specific albums for dogs. And then also, if you'd like a checklist of how to create a human heart connection with your dog through music, go to canineclassical.com/in tune for getting in tune with your dog through heart connection and music.
Now, if people want to get a hold of you, is there a way through the website to get a hold of you?
Yes, there'll be a contact form on that, and also, with a rebrand where everything will, by the time this drops, everything will have been changed from My Zen Pet on social channels to Canine Classical on social.
So on Instagram, I'm assuming you're doing all of them, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and all
Yep,
that stuff, and it'll be Canine Classical is what it's gonna be?
yep, yep.
So will you just change the name? Because 'Cause I'm following you anyway, so it'll just change and I'll automatically I'll have it.
Yeah. already have Canine Classical in the sideline. So I say this now because we're recording this at a time that
Right.
it'll be out by the time this airs. And yeah, reserved all the things.
Well, first of all, this has been really fun for me, but now we're at that point where everybody gets to start cringing because we got to do the joke. Because I
You
told
know
you.
what? I'm gonna have to think. No, I thought.
Oh
Of
no,
three.
I have one. You know what? I have one for you that
No,
you're
I
gonna.
I have one too.
Okay, good. Well, I have a surprise one for you, and I'm hoping you don't know it, but I bet you do. But anyway, so as I tell everybody that's listening, I know you're cringing. We all know that if you listened before, but again, if you've got kids, nephews, nieces, grandchildren, and you want them to tell the joke, please. I know you don't want to hear my joke because you're going to hear mine today too. Send me an email at mkyle@thefurrealpodcast.com. Keep following, listening, all that kind of stuff. But you've got great ideas for the show. So, and also the guests that I ask to do it all the time, they don't have to be suffering too and to tell the joke. So please send that in. So Lisa, you're up. Here's your joke time.
Okay. So am I sharing my funny story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So it's not a joke, but it was at the time. It's one of these things that at the time it was horrifying, and as years have passed, it's become very funny. So this was so long ago. So Gina, my black lab, she wasn't a puppy, as I didn't have her till she was a year and a half. So maybe she was 2 years old. So that would have been like 17 years ago. And Gina was the perfect dog. Like, she never got into anything. She never, like, I'd come from Sanchez, who like couldn't leave a cookie out, couldn't, like, he'd get into everything. Gina never touched anything, never like anything, nothing until one time. So, but she was toy crazy. So that's the important part of this. So I had a male suitor over who was wearing kind of something that looked like a retainer, but it was his front tooth that was like attached to something that looked like a retainer.
Right.
And it was put down by him on not the
Oh my
floor,
God.
but a low level table.
Oh my
And
God.
Gina, the next morning, he couldn't find his front tooth. Gina, thinking it was a toy because it was this plastic
Oh
kind
my
of thing that
God.
was a toy, had destroyed it.
Oh
So
my,
he had to go home toothless, and it was another week before he
oh
could
my
get a tooth.
God. That's
I have
hilarious.
never told that story. Only my best women friends know that story. I've never told it publicly. I think I can do it because I'm not on camera.
Oh, that's
But
hilarious.
and now Gina's passed, so I can finally tell the story. In her whole life, her entire life, that was the only thing she ever got into because I couldn't blame her. She thought it was a toy. It was on towards the ground. Yeah.
So was your face red when you were telling it?
No, no, I'm fine. It's so many years have passed and I'm fine, but man, I couldn't. Yeah, that was pretty embarrassing.
So I found a joke for you specifically to see. I hope you haven't heard it. So here's mine. Did you hear about the dog owner that taught his dog taught his dog to play the piano?
I have not heard this one, no.
Well, his balk was worse than his bite. That's how bad mine are. I told you. Anyways,
I could have guessed it even though I never heard
yeah,
it.
I know. I just knew you knew this. I mean, I told you how bad they are.
Speaking of which, I also wanna share that I am teaching Sundance a whole bunch of very unique tricks because they're all around the piano. They're around the bench, under the bench, on the bench, putting your paw on the keys. So we're working up to piano lessons with her.
That's hilarious. Well, first of all, Lisa, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it, and this is a special one for me, truly. And playing that thing, I can't wait to play. I can't wait till it comes out. It's going to be awesome.
Thank you so much. This is such a pleasure, Mark. It was really fun.
Oh, it's really fun for me. And then for everybody else that's out there listening, as I always say, really, you guys are the ones that make the show, the ones that keep following and all that. But please pass the word out. This is a great opportunity to tell people for somebody who has an anxious dog and all that. But most importantly, for you guys to keep listening and making my life fun all the time. I get to meet all these cool people. It really is important. So thanks so much from the bottom of my heart. For real.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, markakyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.